In this video, I want to show you how you can make very cool Blender green screen scenes, very creative, but also very cheap to make, because the green screen I was using here is a $34 portable green screen I got from Amazon. I put the affiliate link in the description, and I didn't use any lighting at all. All I was using was daylight from the window. In that way you can create your own very creative scenes, because most people, they don't shoot from a weird angle like that. Most people shoot from a eye level angle, and which is awesome. I do that too. But if you go nuts, if you can create an angle like this which is very unique, then you're really gonna stick out with your Blender scenes. And today I'm gonna show you how you can do that. So first of all, I needed to shoot my footage, and of course I had a bird's eye view. I had mad shooting from upstairs. I had my windows left and right, and I was standing on the green screen. The only thing I had to worry about is to not cross over away from my green screen. So me, the subject, is going to stay inside the green, so it's going to be easier to key. And also it's a moving camera shot. The same thing would have worked with a tripod shot, which would have made the rest of the workflow a little easier. But the cool thing is, when you don't shoot it from a tripod, if you have a handheld shot, that the shot is going to be way more creative, because the actual perspective is moving, not just what you can do in post or in CG. The actual camera is moving, but that means that we also have to track the footage. And now I'm going to show you how you can do that. What you need is an editing software, a compositing software, and a 3D software. My editing and compositing software are both Davinci, and my 3D software is going to be Blender. So I just got my footage inside of Davinci, so I can look through it, and you can see I'm looking at the edges here, making sure that I'm not crossing over. Oh, here gets close, but not too close out of my green screen, so I'm not going to have any issues with the keying part. And you can also see how evenly lit my green screen is, and that obviously helps when I'm lit by windows from left and right, so I have an even light. If you did the same thing outside in the sunlight, you're gonna have issues, because the sun is gonna throw a big shadow on your green screen. That's gonna be more difficult. So if you can do it in the shade, that's gonna be better. So now I just have to crop my footage to make sure I have the beginning and ending aligned, which I want to start here. So I'm going to cut out the beginning part, gone, and in the end, let's see where it finishes. Let's say I'm not moving anymore. I come back. Okay, right here. Cool. So I'm going to cut this also off. Done. This is my 20-second video. It is pretty long. Once the final video is done, it's going to render for a while, but it's going to be great. So now I need to get rid of my green screen. But I also need this video for Blender to track, because all this camera movement here, you can see how much the camera is shaking around. All this needs to be tracked. So I need this video as is inside of Blender. But before I export it, I'm gonna just throw a LUT on it so it's easier for Blender. So now I'm just gonna export this one. I call it video footage, 23.976 frames per second. That's important. And render. Now I'm gonna go back here. I'll just duplicate it, because I'm gonna need this for my before and after. So in this one, I actually have to use Fusion. If you use After Effects, then just make a dynamic link to After Effects to get the green screen out. Inside of Fusion, I'll just pick a frame where I believe I see most of the green screen. So we need a node here. I'm gonna click on Media In, and we're gonna look for Delta Keyer. I'm going to add this. This node is in between my media input and media output. I'm going to turn it on for both windows. And here I can show only my alpha. So it's going to be all white, because right now everything is visible. I want to remove the green screen and everything around it. And the left window is going to show me what's actually keyed out. So now I'm going to go on my background color. I'm going to drag and drop this tool. And you can see when I go on my skin, I would be keyed out. Or if I go my head is going to be keyed out. I want to get rid of the green. And I'm gonna just pick a green somewhere here which removes most of the green, which is right here. Now here it doesn't look too bad. It looks like, okay, our job here is done. But when I zoom in here, we can actually see the black is not completely black. The white also has some grainage in it, some noise, and even the white outside, which is not important, also is just grayed out. It's not completely white. So we need to fix that at least my character here, myself, is going to be completely white. And the way we're going to do that, I'm going to go on my matte settings and increase the threshold a little, increase the contrast, especially on the brighter side, bring the whites down until I'm completely white. In order to see better what we're doing, what I like to do is I'm going to give myself another node. I think it's a background node. There we go. I'm just going to add it. And on the background color, let's just do the opposite color of green. Let's do pink. Happen to be my favorite color too. I'm going to add a merge node. Background is already connected. I'm going to connect this into the foreground and this into my media output. Now you can see I have a pink background instead, just so I can see the edges better if the key is well done. So now I'm going to go back on my delta key and adjust it a little until it looks better. Blur it a little. Clean foreground helps a lot, and clean background. I still have some grainage here. Hear the noise. One way to do that is I'm going to use a denoiser node, noise reduction. This one I'm going to plug in early on. Under method, I'll do better, large, motion up, ultra noise reduction. I go down a little with my erode, and also under fringe, I'm gonna have a spill suppressor and well done, so all the green on my skin color is gonna be gone too. So just play with the settings until you get a nice clean key. Now our job here is not done yet, because obviously we still see our surroundings here and we need to get rid of them. So I'm just gonna go to like a middle frame, like somewhere here where we see the whole green screen, like right here. And now I'm gonna click on my delta key, go on my polygon tool, and now I'm gonna draw a garbage mask. A garbage mask which goes around the green screen as close to the edge as possible, because you don't know how much your character, myself, is moving. So just stay close to your edge, because what you don't want to do is cut out yourself too much at all. So now this polygon tool, I use it as a garbage mask. So I'm just going to select this with the right click, go to delta key and use it as a garbage mat. Under the polygon settings, I'm just going to invert it, and now you can see everything else is pink too. But we're not done yet. Since I'm moving a lot, I need to make sure that actually the mask is moving with myself too, or with the camera rather. So whenever the camera is changing like this, I have to select all polygons here and move it according to my mask. You don't have to do this for every single frame, but depending on how much your camera is moving, you have to do it more or less. And that, that's just something you need to do. Like I usually do like in bigger distances, and then I just go in between and fix those edges until this is done. But I don't want to bore you with this part, so I'm just going to skip to the part where it's done. And once you believe you're done, do yourself the favor, go to the very first frame and just play it through and observe both windows and see if you see any, maybe there is a white glitching down here, or maybe you're cutting off your subject. Just watch frame by frame very closely, especially this frame, because you're going to see better any issues. Like here, for example, oh, there you go. I see this little white piece. I'm just going to correct this and even overcorrect it a little wherever it comes out, and keep playing and watch your, oh, there you go, another issue like right here. I'm just going to fix that. And make sure that you're very thorough with this, because you don't want to get like weird results in the end because your actual video is coming through and not just your subject. So just play it all through, up there again, and make sure everything is good. So once you believe it's done, just scrub through it one more time just to make sure there's no weirdness going on. And yes, we do have a perfect black and white mask now. What do we do with this? I'm gonna go to my final output again and double check if the edges look fine. If they do, it's great. If not, try to correct those edges, because you do want to avoid this black fringe. Blur it a little, but not too much. This would be too much, this is too little. So just a tiny bit, blur the edges, and then we're good with that. Now we don't need those two layers anymore, so I'm just going to turn them off, and now we have a perfect cutout. I'm going to go back to my editing layout. The color correction, the LUT I put on it before, it's still on. I'm going to leave it on, and now I have to export this. So I'm just going to make a in point, out point with I and O. Going under my export settings, I already made a template for that. GreenScreen export. I usually export out of Davinci in QuickTime, GoPro Cineform, RGB 16-bit, and the most important thing, export alpha. That's what you need. Select my folder, I'm gonna call it GreenScreen rooftop film, because that's me. Save and add to render queue and render. Now that this is done, it's exporting right now. Now my job is to bring the original video with the green screen into Blender, track it so the camera movement, which is real, can be translated into the CG camera movement. And that's the next step, and let's go. So that's what my Blender looks like when I open it. Yours might look different, but most importantly, have a human 3D scan or model in the right scale inside your scene, so you know everything is going to be to scale what you're going to add into the scene. Okay, the first thing we need to do is go in motion tracking. I have my tab up here. If you don't have it, go on plus VFX and motion tracker. Click on that. Once you open it, it looks very different. We have a few different important windows. The most important windows is going to be up here. Up here we can see through the camera. We don't have a 3D camera yet, so that one doesn't matter yet. But here, very important, click on open. Now we can import our original video with the green screen video footage. That's what we exported in here. Now you might think, what did we do all this keying for? It's gonna come into place later, I promise. But first we need to track our camera. And for that, it's important that we have lots of information in our scene. If we had a blank green screen here, it would be very difficult. In that case, I would have markers on my green screen. But since I shot this in my living room, I can track all my surroundings here, excluding myself. I don't want to track myself because I am moving different than the camera is moving. I only want to capture the camera movement. So for that, the first step is click on Set Scene Frames. That's going to make the timeline as long as the video. And then also prefetch. That's going to load my video into the RAM. Next one is go under Tracking Settings. And I usually use one of those. For example, in this one I have fast motion, so or it's also blurry footage, but I'm going to use fast motion for now. That's going to adjust the pattern size and search size. It still might be too small, so you have to increase either one of those. Pattern size is going to recognize pattern of your trackers, and the search size is the bigger one where it looks for those patterns. Under motion model, I'm going to use perspective. Under match, I'm going to use keyframe. I'm going to select prepass and normalize. And now when I click on detect features, it's going to find me a few markers. Right now I can already tell those markers are going to be too small. So I'm just going to delete those again. I'm going to make the pattern size and the search size bigger. When I go into detect features again, I can see they're a little bigger and a few more. If it's still not enough, which is not, go under your detect feature setting and crank down the threshold, either by a lot or by a little. I just need enough trackers in the end. I'm going to select the trackers on myself and delete them because again, I don't want to track myself. When I select A, it selects all of them. I can play track it backwards because I'm on frame 3 right now. I should have been on frame 1, doesn't matter. I track backwards, so just going to track it the few frames backwards. Now I'm going to go back to frame 3 and track forward. So now it's going to track my whole shot, and hopefully it's going to do a good job. I think only one tracker survived until the end. Doesn't matter, we're just going to detect features again, increase the threshold a little more so we get more trackers, and track backwards. None of the trackers survived to the bitter end, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to somewhere in the middle, frame 260, detect features, decrease the threshold again so I get some more, track forward. I'm going to just repeat the process until I believe I have throughout enough trackers to work with. Lots of those trackers are going to be not usable because they're just not tracking properly, but a lot of those are going to be great. And what we need to do after we have enough trackers overall, delete the ones which don't do a good job. And how to do that, I'm going to show you in a second. Great, now that I believe I have enough trackers overall, what I'm going to do is before I solve the camera, I'm just going to go down here under my graph editor and look at all the lines here which seem to making unreasonable movements, like this one for example. All the trackers are somewhere down here, but this one is spiking, this one is spiking, there are a few spiking here. So I'm just going to delete all the ones which are off the norm. I'm going to delete them with X. I just select them and delete them with X manually. To delete more than that, you have to create new markers, or trackers rather. Great, now that we believe we deleted enough, I'm going to make it smaller again, and let's go to my solve section. I'm going to select keyframes, so it selects my keyframe A and B automatically. That's usually my go-to in the beginning. Focal length, optical center, and radial distortion. I'm going to select them all. I could also not select focal length because I know what focal length I was shooting in, so I'm just going to go on my track and under lens 24, actually this is what I was shooting on. And now I'm gonna solve camera. Our goal here is to get close to 1 pixel of a solve error or lower. It just solved the camera and I have a solve error of 67, and that's a lot, but that can have multiple reasons. The most common reason is I have too many bad trackers in here, but what it can also be is because the keyframes it shows are not that great. So if I select unselect keyframe and select my keyframes manually, it might solve my camera better. So I'm just gonna solve it again with 2 other numbers, and there you go, we just chopped off half of our solve error. And I'm just gonna do it a couple of times with different numbers until I have some more reasonable number, like 14, that I like way better. When I select all of my keys, I can even see which ones are doing crazy stuff, like this one for example. Let's look at this key individually, or like this tracker. See, it's like moving around, so I know this one is definitely bad. So if I delete this one and I solve it again, I should already get a better solve error. So I'm just going to do it a couple of times. Just look through my footage here. I'm tracking my butt, which is a great thing to do, but not when it comes to camera tracking. So I'm just going to delete it, solve it again. By the way, something I didn't explain before, I have green lines and red lines and a blue line here. That means, I believe the red line is for my x-axis, so all the trackers which go left and right, and the green line is going up and down. The blue line tells me the solve error. So the more straight the solve error is, the better. So let's just have our keyframes a little earlier, because I don't even need the whole scene. Let's just go from 1 to 200. So now I have a solve error of 5 pixels, which is awesome. Now we just need to delete more trackers until we believe we deleted all the bad tracks. Like I said, I can do that manually. Like here I can see this tracker is doing some funny business. I'm going to delete this one. But it is very labor intense to delete all those manually. What you can also do as the last resort, go under cleanup, clean tracks, and here you can adjust your reprojection error. Pick something higher than your self error, so let's go with 6 for now. So selected a bunch of trackers. I'm going to delete them all, and now I'm going to solve my camera again, and it helped a little. So I'm just going to do this again, clean tracks, go a little lower with this number. So anything above 4 is going to get deleted. Solve camera again. All right, we are under 1 pixel now, and if that wasn't a tutorial, I would probably keep playing with it until it got like at 0.5 or lower than that. But since it's a tutorial, I just have to move on here. Anyways, the next step is we have to create a camera and give this camera the same information the real camera had. The way we're going to do that, I'm going to scroll down here under the scene setup. I'm going to set as background and also set up tracking setup. So now when we look through this view, we can see, okay, the camera, the CG camera seems to be moving right, but also not. And the reason is we don't know, or the camera, the Blender doesn't know what we're looking at here. This here is the ground. Okay, we know that, you know that, and most definitely I know that, but Blender doesn't know that. So we have to tell Blender what is the ground and where is our origin point. So I'm going to select 3 trackers on my floor, like these 3, and tell Blender, Burl, this is the floor. And now we're looking top down on our scene, just the way we're supposed to. And that is awesome. But why is this guy so big and why am I so small? Because Blender doesn't know our scale. Blender doesn't know where our origin point is and how big everything is. So I'm just going to select 1 point right now and tell Blender, set this as origin. So now we know, okay, this corner here, I picked this corner because it's easier for me to navigate later on where this corner is once I build my 3D scene. But still, this guy is way too big. Why is he too big? Because Blender doesn't know the scale. So I'm going to pick 2 trackers where I kind of can estimate the distance. Like this one, it's not a meter, it's maybe like 80 centimeters between those 2 trackers. I'm going to select both of them, set scale. Right now it made it into a meter, but I can just turn this down until it's like 0.8. Again, it's a guess. It's a wild guess. It could be even less. Maybe it's like half a meter, but that should be somewhat the size of the scale of my scene. And now we're technically done. I can also move my guy here. I'm going to hit G, Shift Z. I'm going to bring him where I believe I'm standing, turn him into the same direction I'm facing. So now I know where I am, or my green screen character, where he is in my 3D environment. And technically, I'm going to save real quick. We're done here with the tracking tab. I'm going to go to layout, and now I can see my scene here. And those are my trackers. All of the trackers here on the floor, I can see, okay, they're actually aligned on the floor, more or less. My character here is also standing there. When I play my video, I can see he's actually standing on the floor, which is great. It looks like he's floating right now, and also, you see how bad the tracking gets back here. So I'm definitely not going to use, I made a bad mistake. I just made a bad mistake. I scrolled on my top view here, and my camera is to view selected, so I have to Shift Z to make sure I don't move this camera. So on your camera view, make sure camera to view is unselected, because now I can zoom in and out, no problem. If that was clicked on, I would actually move my CG camera, which would mess up everything. So don't do that. My point being is the tracking looks fine in the beginning, and now I just have to decide how long can I play this without this tracking being messed up. Here I can already see jitter. I probably can't get away with this one, so I'm probably just gonna play this video until this jitter happens. So 215 frames. So I'm just gonna adjust my timeline to 215, and this is gonna be my whole video. I hope it's gonna be interesting enough. Yeah, he's looking to the right and to the left. Okay, that's good enough to showcase what I'm doing here. Okay, next step. We need to get our green screen video, the one we keyed out in Davinci or After Effects, whatever you're using. We need to get this video in here, because right now when we look through our 3D scene, we see there's nothing going on. It's just like my character, which I'm not even using. It's just like for scale reference. Especially when I stand, I can see, do they kind of look the same height or not? And they do, more or less. So now I need to get my green screen video in here, without the green. The way I'm going to do that, I'm going to Shift A, Mesh Plane. And now my green screen rooftop fill, this is the one I exported. I'm just going to double click this. And now I can see my video is in here as a plane. And now I need to do a few things. So obviously I need to rotate it and bring it into the same position where this guy is. It's basically impossible to match. So what I'm gonna do is, the first thing I do is I'm gonna select my video, go under constraint and give it a track to constraint, and I want it to track to my camera. What it does is it makes this video face the camera perfectly. So wherever I bring this video, it always faces the camera, which is helpful for the beginning. Now the next step is I just scale it up until it kind of matches the size of my video. Right now it's mirrored, so I'm just gonna, under my constraint, I'm gonna hit Z. So now it's facing the same way. So now I just have to bring it more or less into the right position, and mostly the scale is important, something like that. Right now you can see it's facing the right way, but it's not oriented the right way. So what I'm gonna do is just apply this constraint for now. So the constraint disappears, but the plane position is right. So what I'm gonna do now is just select my video, it is selected, shift select my camera and copy. I'm gonna copy the rotation. My video is rotated the same way like my camera is. So when I now in my camera viewport, I just bring it into the right position until it perfectly matches. Now, right now my Passbar 2 is completely on. Let me turn it down in the camera settings, because that's going to be a helpful trick. Go under camera, background, and first of all, I'm going to increase the opacity. We're not going to need the video actually anymore, just for the alignment. But the other one is Passbar 2, I want it to be down. So now I can see the edges of my other frame. So when I move this, I can see, okay, is it perfectly aligned or not? So I'm going to look at the edges here and see, okay, it's a little too far up here. Here it's definitely too far. I'm going to go to the other side, too far this way and too far down. So I'm just going to move it manually, like here, and scale it down until it matches. The more accurate you do that, the better the end result is going to be. But that being said, it doesn't have to be 100%. You can, it's very forgiving. You can play with it a little more. But more or less, you want the frame to align with the video frame, because now it actually is perfectly aligned. More or less, when I zoom in here, I can see it's still not perfect, and make it a little bigger. Okay, now that's awesome, and we're almost there when we can start being creative and actually making a cool scene out of this. Like, one more thing we need to do is, if I played my footage now, you could see that it's actually not aligning anymore, because we need to parent our video at the exact frame where we were doing the adjustment. We need to parent those videos, the video with the camera together. So I'm gonna select my video, shift select by camera, hit Control P and object, and now I parented it to each other. So now wherever my camera is going, the same way my video is moving. Okay, this part is very important. For the case that your subject is moving closer or further from the camera, which in my case it's probably not necessary, but I'm gonna show you anyways, because that's a very powerful move. What we're gonna do is, let's unparent it real quick with Alt P. What I'm gonna do is shift select, select my video, shift select my camera again. Now what I'm gonna do is copy, but this time the location. Now we basically ruined everything what we did so far, but we're gonna click on our video, hit tab, so we're gonna go in edit mode. Okay, important that we do this in edit mode, and hit G, ZZ. Now it's moving it away from the camera in edit mode, so that actually brings it into the right position until it lines up like that. Again, if you work with green screen like that, it doesn't have to be 100% accurate. If you were working with rotoscope video, so I had a rotoscope video and I actually want to use the video as in the 3D scene, which I don't in that case, then you have to be 100% accurate. But now that I moved this in edit mode away, if I scale this video, even though it gets bigger and smaller, it scales it towards the camera, okay, and not I basically shifted the origin point of my video to the camera, so wherever my camera is going, and I scale it up and down. It basically moves it away or closer to the camera while it's scaling, so it doesn't change its look. Even though I get closer and closer and smaller, it still looks the same. But with the example of my 3D character here, if I scale it down, you can see that it basically moves past my 3D character, and that way I can align the distance to the camera perfectly. And that needs to be animated, but we're gonna worry about that later if it's actually necessary. As long as it's not clipping through the ground, it's not really important. Speaking of ground, when we track something in Blender, it creates a ground and a light automatic. I don't want either of those things right now, so I'm just going to delete the light for sure, delete my background collection also. Now this is my ground here. In this ground, I just make it the size where I believe, okay, this is where my guy is standing on, so probably just like something like my green screen on my ground, so I know this is like the place where he can be walking on, so I don't have to worry about it too much. So like this, like that, more or less. So this platform here is the foundation of my 3D scene. So when I turn this guy off, and one more step I forgot to redo, make sure to parent it back to the camera, otherwise it's not gonna be moving the same. So make sure the camera and your 3D, your green screen person is tracked to each other, because then it actually looks like it belongs there. So when I play through the footage, you can see, let me turn off motion blur so you can see actually better what I'm doing here. So since my video is parented to the camera, it's going to move or undo the movement, because it's hard to explain. It's also hard for me to wrap my head around it, but it's basically, since the camera and the video is tracked to each other, even if in the video I'm moving back and forth, but because the camera was moving back and forth, it ennodes this movement. I hope that makes sense. It's super hard for me to explain this, because it's very hard for me to understand it. Like every time when I think about this process, sometimes I can't sleep in the middle of the night because I'm trying to understand this process. It just happens. It's magic. How about that? Yeah, it's just magic. So just believe it. So make sure to parent your video to the camera. But here you can also see, okay, now he's sticking out through the ground. So what I need to do is, before I move on with anything else, I need to animate the scale of my 2D video, because it's 2D. I'm not actually standing there. From this perspective of the camera, it looks like I'm standing there, but actually I'm not. It's just a 2D video. So I need to animate the scale in object mode of my plane here. So for that, I also have my graph editor here, but I also have my regular timeline underneath. I don't really use it, but I have it open so I can turn on auto keying, which I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do is just hit S and click, because that's the scale I wanted in the beginning. Maybe I can adjust it. So what I want is to almost clip it through the ground. I zoom in here a little, so almost clip it through the ground. I'm looking at my butt here. I'm sorry that I'm doing this to you, but basically right there. So now it created a keyframe at frame 1. Now I'm just going to go through my video, see it clips again, and bring it out a few frames forward, and again bring it, clip it. And even though I'm scaling it, the size is not going to change, because it's scaling it towards or away from the camera. So I don't have to worry about that with this little technique. So I'm just going to, every 20 frames or so, scale it, and through the auto keying, just generates keyframes automatically every time I change the scale. And I always look to not clip it through the ground, but barely scratching the surface. And I always look at the closest spots to the camera, like here. I don't have to worry about this part in this particular case. In other scenes it might. So just look at whatever is clipping through the camera and make it not clip, not through the camera, through the ground. That's why the ground is important. And again, you don't have to be super exact. It's a very forgiving process. But you know, the better job you do, the better the result is going to be. So every 20 frames here, it clips a lot. So I'm just going to zoom out a little more. There you go, like this. every 20 frames. And after you're done, you can just skip through a timeline between the keyframes you did, just like in the keying process, and look if there's other spots which might clip to the ground. Because if you go too far, it's not terrible. If you clip through the floor, then you're gonna see it. So make sure that you again do a thorough job. And the more the camera is moving closer and away from the camera, the more you have to do it. Okay, if the camera was in a tripod, you can ignore this process, but since it's a handheld shot, you have to do it a little more. And you can always come back to it if you see you have any issues. But anyways, once you believe you're done, make sure to turn off auto keying, because if you don't, you might animate things you don't want to animate. And again, it looks super weird from like a side angle. This only works from the actual camera point of view. So when I turn off my guy here, I play it through, it looks like this guy is actually standing on a 3D floor. And from here, now you can start being creative. You can build a whole environment, ignore all your video, because you can just turn it off in the camera settings. At this point, yeah, you can just turn it off. Camera setting, here I just turn it off, and now I can just manipulate this the way I want. I can make this my plane here. I'm just gonna go in edit mode, make a huge skyscraper, and make buildings and whatever. I can make it whatever I want. And now I'm gonna build something cool for you. I'll do it off camera because it's gonna take too long, because the process after this, after everything is set up, that's the actual work where you have to be creative and come up with something cool. And so yeah, I'm gonna do this off camera, and we're gonna come back here once it's done. So see you in 3 days or so. So this is what I came up with. I hope you like my little scene. I think it turned out pretty cool. If you want to know how I actually built the environment, please let me know in the comments below, because usually I don't really know if that's what you guys are into, or you just want to know about the green screen process and you want to keep the creative part on the your side. But let me know. I can tell you how I generated this. And yeah, I hope you like it. And if you like the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you like this t-shirt, make sure to give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you aren't already, and see you in the next video. Toodaloo.